Where exactly is he parked right now? That was it. No panic, no hesitation, no wasted breath asking if she was sure, if maybe she was imagining things, if maybe it was just a parent waiting to pick someone up. Daniel Parker had spent 11 years in the United States Army. He'd done 2 tours overseas. He'd walked into rooms where the wrong step meant you didn't walk out. He knew what calm sounded like when everything inside you was screaming. And right now, everything inside him was screaming. But Emily didn't need to hear that. Emily needed to hear her father's voice, steady, controlled, and certain. "He's behind the fence," she whispered. "Same spot, near the big tree where we play kickball. The dark car with the black windows. Daddy, he never gets out. He just sits there." "Okay, baby, listen to me carefully. Are you inside the building right now?" "Yes, I'm in the bathroom." "Good. Stay inside. Don't go near any windows. Don't tell anyone except your teacher. Walk straight to Mrs. Hernandez's room and stay there. Can you do that for me?" "Yes." "I'm coming. I'll be there in 12 minutes. You did the right thing, Em. You hear me? You did exactly right." He hung up, and for 3 full seconds, Daniel Parker stood in his garage with his phone pressed against his chest, eyes closed, jaw tight, breathing through something that felt a lot like rage and a lot like fear, twisted into one ugly knot. Then he opened his eyes. He grabbed his helmet. He swung his leg over his Harley, and he pulled out of the driveway doing 40 before he hit the end of his street. 12 minutes. That's what he told her. He was going to make it in 8. Now here's what you need to understand about Daniel Parker. He wasn't the kind of father who hovered. He wasn't the kind who tracked his daughter's every move or showed up at school over small things. He believed in raising a kid who could think, who could act, who could trust her own mind when something didn't feel right. But he also believed in preparation. 2 years earlier, when Emily was 7, he sat her down at the kitchen table and handed her a small black phone. Prepaid. Basic. No internet, no apps, no games. Just a keypad and 4 numbers saved in the contacts. Mom, Dad, Grandma, 911. His wife, Rebecca, had raised an eyebrow. "She's 7, Daniel." "That's old enough to dial a phone," he said, "and old enough to know when something's wrong." "You're going to scare her." "No," he said. "I'm going to prepare her. There's a difference." He didn't lecture Emily that day. He didn't fill her head with horror stories. He sat across from her with a cup of coffee and said one thing that stuck with her more than anything she'd ever learned in school. "Em, if your stomach tells you something's wrong, if you feel it right here," he pressed his fist gently against her belly, "you call me. You don't wait. You don't talk yourself out of it. You don't worry about being wrong. You call me, and I will come. Every single time. No matter what." She had nodded, eyes wide, and tucked the phone into her backpack like it was a secret weapon. For 2 years, she never used it. Until Wednesday. Let's go back to Monday. Emily noticed the SUV at 2:45 p.m. during afternoon recess. Canyon Ridge Elementary had a wide open field behind the main building, bordered by a chain-link fence and a narrow service road that ran behind a row of houses. Most days, nobody parked there. Sometimes a utility truck. Sometimes a delivery van making a wrong turn. But on Monday, there was a dark gray SUV sitting about 30 feet from the fence, engine running. Windows tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. Emily was playing Foursquare with her friends when she glanced toward the fence and saw it. She stopped mid-bounce. Her friend Chloe said, "Emily, it's your turn." But Emily wasn't listening. She was staring at the SUV. Something about it made her stomach tighten. Not a lot, just enough. She told herself it was nothing. Someone checking their phone. Someone waiting for a kid in the neighborhood. She went back to the game. She hit the ball. She laughed at something Chloe said. But twice more before the bell rang, she looked back at that fence. The SUV was still there, and she could have sworn, she couldn't prove it, but she could have sworn someone inside was watching them. On Tuesday it was back. Same time, same spot, same tinted windows, same quiet engine. This time, Emily didn't try to convince herself it was nothing. This time, she felt it deeper, that pull in her gut that her dad had talked about. That instinct that says something is off even when you can't explain what. She stood near the monkey bars and watched the SUV for almost 5 minutes. Her friend Jalen came up beside her and said, "What are you looking at?" "That car," Emily said. "It was here yesterday, too." Jalen shrugged. "So? Cars park everywhere." "Not here. Nobody parks here. And it was here yesterday, exact same spot." "Maybe it's someone's dad." "Then why don't they get out?" Jalen didn't have an answer for that. He looked at the SUV, squinted, and then ran off to join a soccer game. Emily stayed where she was. She didn't move until the bell rang. That night at dinner, she almost said something. Her mom was talking about work. Her dad was eating quietly, the way he always did, present but calm, like he was always half listening to something no one else could hear. Emily opened her mouth. Then she closed it. She wasn't sure yet. She didn't want to bother anyone if she was wrong. But lying in bed that night, she couldn't sleep. She kept seeing those tinted windows. She kept feeling that knot in her stomach. And she kept hearing her father's voice from 2 years ago. "You don't wait. You don't talk yourself out of it." She pulled the covers up to her chin and made a decision. If the car was there again tomorrow, she was calling. Wednesday came. Emily barely heard a word her teacher said all morning. During math, she stared at the clock. During reading, she turned pages without seeing them. Her leg bounced under her desk. Her palms were damp. When the bell rang for afternoon recess, she walked outside with the other kids, but didn't join any game. She went straight to the fence line. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes scanning the service road. For a moment, it was empty, just pavement and weeds and the back of someone's wooden fence. Then she heard it, the low rumble of an engine. And from the far end of the road, the dark gray SUV rolled slowly into view and stopped. Same spot, same angle, same dark windows facing the playground. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. 3 days. 3 days this car had been here. 3 days someone had been sitting in that vehicle, engine running, watching children play. She didn't hesitate. She turned and walked, not ran, walked, just like her dad taught her, straight back into the building. She passed 2 teachers without stopping. She went into the girls' bathroom, locked herself in the last stall, and pulled the phone from the inside pocket of her backpack. Her hands were trembling. She almost dropped it twice. She scrolled to Dad and pressed call. It rang once, twice. "Hey, Em, what's up?" And that's when the tears almost came. Just hearing his voice. Just knowing he picked up. Just knowing she wasn't alone with this anymore. "Daddy," she said. "He's back again." Daniel made it to the school in 8 minutes and 40 seconds. He came from the north side, avoiding the main entrance, using the service road that ran behind the school, the same road where the SUV was parked. He saw it before he even rounded the last turn. Dark gray, tinted windows, engine idling. Exactly where Emily described. His first instinct was to walk up to that window and drag whoever was inside out by the collar. He'd done worse for less. His years in the army had trained him to act fast and think later. His years in the Hells Angels had taught him that sometimes the only language people understood was force. But Daniel didn't do that. He pulled his bike to the side of the road, 40 yards behind the SUV, and he called 911. "I need to report a suspicious vehicle parked behind Canyon Ridge Elementary School," he said. "It's been here 3 consecutive days during school hours. My daughter reported it. Dark gray SUV, tinted windows, engine running. I'm on the North Service Road." The dispatcher asked him to stay on the line, asked him not to approach the vehicle, asked him to remain calm. "I'm calm," Daniel said. And he was. On the outside. On the inside, something ancient and protective was coiling tighter with every second. He watched the SUV from his position. Didn't move, didn't rev his engine, didn't give any sign that he was anything more than a man on a motorcycle taking a break. But his eyes never left that vehicle. 3 minutes passed, then 4. In the distance, he heard the first faint wail of a siren. And that's when the SUV's brake lights flashed red. Then the reverse lights came on. The SUV was trying to leave. Daniel didn't think. He acted. He rolled his motorcycle forward, right into the center of the narrow service lane, and killed the engine. He swung his leg off, stood beside the bike, and faced the approaching vehicle. The SUV stopped, 20 feet away, engine still running. Daniel stood with his hands visible at his sides. He didn't shout. He didn't wave his arms. He didn't reach for anything. He just stood there, a 6'2" wall of leather and conviction, blocking the only way out. The SUV didn't move. 10 seconds passed. 20. The sirens grew louder. Daniel could feel his heartbeat in his jaw, in his fists, in the soles of his boots. Every cell in his body was telling him to walk up to that window, to put his face 6 inches from the glass, to make whoever was in there understand exactly what kind of mistake they'd made. But he didn't. Because his daughter was inside that school. Because this needed to go through the system. Because the best thing he could do for Emily right now wasn't to be a fighter. It was to be a witness. 2 Phoenix PD cruisers came around the corner, lights blazing. Then the third. They blocked both ends of the service road within seconds. Daniel stepped back from his bike and raised his hands so the officers could see them. He pointed at the SUV. "That's the vehicle," he said. 3 days. My daughter called it in." The officers moved toward the SUV with weapons drawn. "Driver, turn off the engine and step out of the vehicle with your hands visible." For a long moment, nothing happened. The SUV just sat there, engine humming, windows black. Daniel's jaw tightened. His fists clenched once, then released. He breathed. Then the engine shut off. The door opened, and a man stepped out. He didn't look like a monster. That's the thing nobody tells you. He looked like someone's neighbor, someone's coworker, someone you'd hold the door for at the grocery store without a second thought. Middle-aged, clean-shaven, collared shirt tucked into khakis, wire-rimmed glasses. He stepped out of that SUV with his hands raised and a calm expression that made Daniel's skin crawl more than any threat ever could. Because that calm was practiced. That calm was rehearsed. That calm was the kind of composure that comes from having done this before, from having been questioned before, from having talked his way out before. "Officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding," the man said. His voice was measured, almost friendly. "I was just checking emails. Pulled over to take a call. I didn't realize I was near a school zone." One of the officers, a woman with sharp eyes and no patience, didn't blink. "License and registration." "Of course." He reached slowly into the vehicle and produced both. "I'm happy to cooperate. I'm sure this is just a mix-up." Daniel watched from 30 feet away. His arms were crossed. His face was stone. He'd seen men like this before. Not in combat, in the world. Men who wore the right clothes and used the right words and counted on the fact that looking normal would be enough to make people look the other way. Not today. The officer took the documents back to her cruiser. Her partner stayed with the man, asking routine questions. "Where do you live? What brings you to this area? How long have you been parked here?" The man had answers for everything. Smooth, quick, logical. Too smooth. Daniel pulled out his phone and called Rebecca. "I'm at the school. Emily's safe. She's inside. Don't come yet. Let the police finish. I'll call you when it's clear." Rebecca's voice cracked on the other end. "What happened?" "She was right," Daniel said. "She was right about everything," echoed through the speaker. "Attention," echoed through the speaker. "Attention all staff and students. We are now in a precautionary lockdown." Every child in the room looked up with wide eyes. Mrs. Hernandez moved to the door, locked it, and turned to the class with a calm smile. "Everyone away from the windows, please. This is just a precaution. Let's all move to the reading corner." 23 kids shuffled across the room. Some whispered. Some giggled nervously. A boy named Marcus started crying quietly. Emily didn't cry. She sat in the reading corner with her knees pulled to her chest, phone still clutched in her hand, and she stared at the wall. Her best friend, Chloe, scooted close and whispered, "Are you okay?" Emily shook her head slowly. "I called my dad." "About what?" "The car. The one behind the fence." Chloe's eyes widened. "That's why we're in lockdown?" Emily didn't answer. She pressed her lips together hard and squeezed the phone tighter. She didn't feel brave. She didn't feel like she'd done something important. She felt sick. She felt like the ground under her had shifted, and nothing was where it was supposed to be. She felt like she had opened a door she couldn't close. And she was 9. 9 years old, carrying the weight of something no child should have to carry. But she carried it. Back on the service road, things were moving fast. The officer returned from her cruiser, and Daniel knew immediately from her walk that something had changed. Her steps were quicker. Her hand moved to her radio. She spoke to her partner in a low voice, and her partner's posture shifted. Shoulders squared, hand drifting closer to his holster. The man in the collared shirt noticed too. His calm flickered, just for a second. A twitch at the corner of his mouth. A quick glance toward his SUV. A slight shift of weight, like a man calculating whether he could still run. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the vehicle and place your hands on the hood of the patrol car." "I don't understand. I told you, I was just..." "Hands on the hood, now." The man complied, but the mask was cracking. Daniel could see it. The rehearsed composure was peeling away, layer by layer, and underneath it was something cold and cornered and desperate. A third officer approached Daniel. "Sir, are you the one who called this in?" "My daughter did," Daniel said. "She's 9. She noticed the vehicle on Monday. Same spot, same time, 3 days in a row. She called me from inside the school about 20 minutes ago." The officer wrote everything down. "And you observed the vehicle yourself when you arrived?" "Yes. Engine running. Tinted windows. Parked with a direct line of sight to the playground. When he heard your sirens, he tried to reverse out. I blocked the road." "You blocked the road with your motorcycle?" "Yes." The officer looked at him for a long beat. Then he nodded. "Stay here. A detective is going to want to talk to you." Daniel nodded back. He didn't need a detective to tell him what he already knew. The look on that officer's face when she came back from running those plates told him everything. This wasn't a man checking emails. This wasn't a wrong turn. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was something far worse.
And his daughter, his 9-year-old daughter, had seen it when no one else did.
Within the hour, the service road behind Canyon Ridge Elementary looked like a command center. 4 patrol cars, 2 unmarked sedans, a crime scene unit van. Yellow tape stretched across both ends of the road. The man in the collared shirt was handcuffed and sitting in the back of a patrol car. His glasses were gone. His rehearsed calm was gone. He stared straight ahead with the blank expression of someone who knew, finally completely, that the game was over. Daniel sat on a bench near the school's side entrance, waiting for clearance to go inside and get Emily. His hands were clasped between his knees. His leather cut bore the patches of a man who had lived through things most people only read about. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, he was just a father, waiting to hold his kid. His phone buzzed, a text from Rebecca. "I'm in the front parking lot. They won't let me in yet. Is she okay?" He typed back, "She's okay. She's strong. She's the reason they caught him." Rebecca replied with nothing. Just 3 dots that appeared and disappeared and appeared again, like she was trying to type something and couldn't find the words. Daniel understood. There were no words for this. There was only the hollow, shaking gratitude of knowing how close something terrible had come, and the sickening awareness that it could have gone differently. So differently. A detective approached Daniel at 4:15 p.m. Plain clothes, firm handshake, eyes that had seen too much and showed too little. "Mr. Parker, I'm Detective Ruiz with the Phoenix PD Special Victims Unit. I'd like to ask you a few questions about what you observed today and what your daughter reported to you." "Anything you need." "Your daughter stated the vehicle had been present for 3 consecutive days." "That's correct. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Same time frame, around 2:45 to 3:30 during afternoon recess." "And she reported this to you by phone today?" "She called me at approximately 2:50 this afternoon. She was inside the school, in the bathroom. She described the vehicle, its location, and the fact that it had been there 3 days running." Detective Ruiz paused. He looked at Daniel with something that wasn't quite surprise but was close to it. "She's 9?" "She's 9. That's remarkably observant for a child her age." Daniel's jaw flexed. "I taught her to trust what she sees. I taught her that if something feels wrong, it probably is. And I taught her to call me before she calls anyone else. That decision may have been the break we needed, Mr. Parker." Daniel looked up. "What do you mean?" Ruiz hesitated. Then he sat down on the bench beside Daniel and lowered his voice. "I can't share details of an active investigation, but I can tell you that the individual detained today has been on our radar for some time. We've been coordinating with federal authorities across multiple counties. The challenge has been placing him at a specific, documented location with corroborating evidence and reliable witnesses." He paused. "Your daughter just gave us that." Daniel felt something collapse inside his chest. Not relief, not anger. Something heavier. Something that pressed down on his lungs and made the world go quiet for a moment. His 9-year-old daughter had just given law enforcement the piece they'd been missing for months. And she'd done it from a bathroom stall with a prepaid phone and a gut feeling. Daniel pressed his palms against his eyes and breathed. "Can I see her now?" he asked. "Yes," Ruiz said. "I'll walk you in." The hallway inside Canyon Ridge Elementary was silent. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Construction paper art hung on the walls. Handprint turkeys, crayon suns, misspelled poems about autumn. Daniel's boots echoed on the tile floor as he followed Detective Ruiz past darkened classrooms where children were still huddled in lockdown positions, whispering, waiting, not fully understanding what was happening, but sensing that the world outside their classroom doors had shifted. They reached the counselor's office at the end of the east wing. The door was open. Inside, two women, the school counselor and Mrs. Hernandez, sat on either side of a small couch. And on that couch, knees pulled to her chest, phone still gripped in both hands, sat Emily. She looked up when the door opened. For 1 second, she didn't move. Her blue eyes were red-rimmed and glassy. Her ponytail was coming loose. Her bottom lip trembled once. Then she launched off that couch like a bullet. She hit Daniel's chest so hard, he stumbled back a step. Her arms wrapped around his neck, her face buried into his shoulder. And the sound she made, that raw, shuddering sob that had been locked inside her chest for 3 days, finally broke free. Daniel caught her. He held her. He pressed his face into her hair and closed his eyes and stood there in that fluorescent hallway, holding his daughter like the world outside didn't exist. "You're okay," he said. "I'm here. You're okay." "I was so scared, Daddy." "I know." "I didn't know if I should call. I didn't know if it was real. I didn't know if I was making it up." "It was real, and you weren't making it up. And you called. That's all that matters." She pulled back and looked at him with those sharp blue eyes, tears still running, and asked the question that broke him in half. "Did I do good?" Daniel's throat closed. He had faced gunfire. He had faced things in the desert that still visited him at 3 a.m. He had never, not once, felt anything hit him as hard as those 4 words from his daughter's mouth. He cupped her face in both hands and said, "You were scared, and you called anyway. That's not good, Emily. That's courage. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do." She crumbled into him again, and this time the sobs came freely, and he let them come, because some things you don't stop. Some things you just hold. And in that hallway, under those buzzing fluorescent lights, surrounded by crayon turkeys and misspelled poems, a father held his daughter and understood something with absolute clarity. She had saved herself. Not him, not the police, not the system. A 9-year-old girl with a prepaid phone and the courage to trust her own fear. She had done what grown adults fail to do every single day. She spoke up. And because she did, the man in that SUV would never sit behind another school fence again. Rebecca Parker didn't remember parking the car. She didn't remember turning off the engine or unbuckling her seatbelt or walking through the front doors of Canyon Ridge Elementary. She remembered the phone call from Daniel. "She's okay. She's strong." And then everything after that was just motion. Pure animal motion. A mother moving toward her child the way water moves downhill. Without thought, without pause, without anything in the world strong enough to stop it. She came around the corner of the east hallway and saw them. Daniel on one knee, Emily pressed into his chest, both of them locked together, like if either one let go, the floor would open beneath them. Rebecca made a sound. Not a word, not a cry. Something older than language. Something that came from the deepest, most primitive part of her brain, the part that had been screaming since she got Daniel's first text message 20 minutes ago. Emily heard it. She turned her head, saw her mother, and reached out one arm without letting go of her father. Rebecca crossed that hallway in 3 steps and wrapped herself around both of them. The 3 of them stayed like that, tangled together, breathing hard, nobody speaking, for what felt like a very long time. It was Emily who broke the silence. "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Rebecca pulled back and held her daughter's face. Don't you dare apologize. Don't you ever apologize for this. You did everything right. I almost didn't call. I almost talked myself out of it. But you didn't. You called. That's what matters. What if I was wrong, though? What if it was just some guy and I made a big deal out of nothing? Daniel's voice came low and firm. Em, look at me. She looked. You weren't wrong. The police are out there right now because of what you saw, because of what you reported. You trusted your gut, and your gut was right. Don't ever let anyone, not a teacher, not a friend, not anyone, make you feel like noticing something is the same thing as overreacting. You hear me? She nodded. Small, shaky, but real. Rebecca looked at Daniel over Emily's head, and in that look was everything. Terror, relief, fury, gratitude, and a question neither of them could answer yet. How close had this actually come? Daniel shook his head slightly. Not now. Not in front of her. Rebecca understood. She swallowed it. She pressed her lips together and held her daughter tighter and swallowed every scream she wanted to let out. Because right now, this moment wasn't about her. It was about Emily. And Emily needed to feel safe. Not scared, not overwhelmed. Safe. The school counselor, a woman named Linda Cho, who had been doing this work for 19 years, approached quietly. Mr. and Mrs. Parker, whenever you're ready, Detective Ruiz would like to speak with Emily. Only if she's comfortable, and you'll be with her the entire time. Daniel looked at Emily. You up for that, kid? Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She took a breath. She straightened her ponytail, the way she always did when she was pulling herself together, a habit she'd had since she was 5. Yeah, she said. I'm up for it. And Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Not pride exactly, but recognition. He was watching his daughter become someone. Right here, right now, in the worst moment of her young life, she was choosing not to collapse. She was choosing to stand. 9 years old. Standing. Detective Ruiz met them in the counselor's office. He pulled a chair around so he was at Emily's eye level, not behind a desk, not standing over her. He sat with his elbows on his knees and his hands clasped, and he spoke to her the way you speak to someone you respect. Emily, my name is Detective Ruiz. I work for the Phoenix Police Department. Your dad told me a little about what you noticed this week, and I'd like to hear it directly from you. Is that okay? Yes, sir. Can you tell me when you first saw the vehicle? Monday. It was during afternoon recess, around 2:45. I was playing Foursquare and I saw a dark gray car parked behind the fence on the service road. The windows were really dark. The engine was on. I remember because I could see the exhaust. Ruiz nodded. He was writing, but his eyes kept coming back to her face. What made you notice it? Emily paused. This was the part that was hardest to explain. Not the facts, but the feeling. The thing that had no evidence, no proof, no logic behind it. Just a knot in her stomach that wouldn't go away. Nobody parks there, she said. Ever. And the windows. You couldn't see in at all. And the engine was running, but nobody got out. It just felt wrong. What did you do on Monday? Nothing. I told myself it was probably nothing, but I kept looking at it. And Tuesday? It was back, same car, same spot, same time. I told my friend Jalen, but he said it was probably just someone's dad. But I didn't think so. Dads get out of the car. Dads come to the gate. This person just sat there. Ruiz stopped writing. He looked at her with the kind of quiet intensity that comes from years of hearing children describe things no child should have to describe. That's a very sharp observation, Emily. My dad told me to pay attention to things that don't fit. He said most people look, but they don't see. He said seeing is different. Daniel, sitting beside her, felt his throat tighten. He'd said that to her at a barbecue 2 summers ago, half distracted, flipping burgers. He didn't even know she was listening. She was always listening. And on Wednesday, Ruiz continued, I was scared all morning. I couldn't concentrate in class. When recess started, I went straight to the fence to check. At first, the road was empty, and I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I was wrong. She stopped. Her hands were gripping the edges of her chair. Then I heard the engine, and it came around the corner and parked in the same exact spot. And I knew it wasn't normal. I knew something was really wrong. So you went inside and called your father? I went to the bathroom first. I locked the door. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. I called my dad and told him everything. Why did you call your dad instead of telling a teacher? Emily looked at Daniel, then back at Ruiz. Because my dad told me that if something ever felt wrong, really wrong, in my gut, I should call him first. He said he would always come, and he did. Rebecca's hand found Daniel's. She squeezed so hard her knuckles went white. Ruiz closed his notebook. He looked at Emily with an expression Daniel had never seen on a detective's face before. It wasn't professional distance. It wasn't measured objectivity. It was something raw and unguarded and deeply human. Emily, I want you to understand something. What you did this week, watching, remembering details, trusting your instincts, making that call, that is exactly what we train adult officers to do. And most adults don't do it half as well as you just did. Emily didn't say anything. She just nodded and pressed closer to her father's side. Ruiz stood. He looked at Daniel. Mr. Parker, can I speak with you privately for a moment? Daniel kissed the top of Emily's head. I'll be right outside the door. 2 minutes. Okay, Daddy. He stepped into the hallway with Ruiz. The detective waited until the door was mostly closed, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't. Daniel waited. The man we detained today, his name is going to be all over the news within 48 hours. I can't give you details, but I need you to understand the scope of what your daughter just helped us do. Tell me, he's been under joint investigation, Phoenix PD, FBI, and 2 other county agencies, for over 14 months. He's been tracked near playgrounds and public parks in at least 4 counties. But he's careful, meticulous. He never stayed long enough for surveillance to catch him. He rotated locations, changed vehicles twice, used rental cars with out-of-state plates. Daniel's fists clenched involuntarily. We knew what he was doing. We knew the pattern. But we couldn't nail a documented, consistent presence at a single location with corroborating witnesses and timestamps. Every time we got close, he moved. Every tip we received was too vague or too late. Ruiz paused and locked eyes with Daniel. Your daughter gave us 3 consecutive days at the same school, with detailed observations, times, vehicle description, and behavioral patterns. She's the most reliable witness we've had in this entire investigation. She's 9 years old, and she just did what 14 months of multi-agency coordination couldn't accomplish. Daniel leaned against the wall. He pressed both palms flat against the cold surface behind him and breathed through his nose. How many schools? He asked. I can't confirm a number. How many, Detective? Ruiz was quiet for a long moment. We've identified activity near at least 11 sites across 4 counties. Daniel's vision blurred.
his ears filled with a high-pitched ringing. 11. 11 schools. 11 playgrounds full of children. His daughter's school was just one of 11. If she hadn't called, Daniel said slowly, would you have caught him at Canyon Ridge? Ruiz didn't answer immediately, and in that silence was the truth. Heavy, nauseating, undeniable. I don't know, Ruiz said finally. We were making progress, but I can't say for certain we would have placed him there before he moved on. Daniel closed his eyes. The hallway spun. Everything spun. Because moved on didn't just mean drove away. Moved on meant something else. Something he couldn't allow himself to think about with his daughter 30 feet away. I need you to get him, Daniel said. His voice was calm, but underneath it was something volcanic. Not for my daughter. For every kid at every school he's been sitting outside of. You get him, and you make sure he never parks behind another fence for as long as he lives. That's exactly what we intend to do, and your daughter's testimony is going to be central to that. Daniel opened his eyes. She's 9. I know, and we'll handle this with every possible protection. But you should prepare yourself. There may come a point where she needs to give a formal statement. Not today, not this week, but eventually. Daniel nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak. He walked back into the counselor's office. Emily looked up from a cup of water the counselor had given her. Rebecca was stroking her hair. Are we going home? Emily asked. Yeah, baby, we're going home. They walked down the hallway together, the three of them. Daniel's arm around Rebecca, Rebecca's arm around Emily. Emily in the middle, where she belonged, where nothing could reach her without going through both of them first. When they pushed through the side exit doors, Daniel stopped. The parking lot was not empty. There were 7 motorcycles parked in the loose line near the curb. 7 men in leather, standing quietly beside their bikes, arms folded or tucked into pockets. They weren't blocking anything. They weren't making a scene. They were just there. Daniel hadn't called them. He hadn't texted the group. He hadn't told a single soul in the club what was happening. But that's not how it worked. Not with these men. Someone had heard the sirens. Someone had seen the police activity near the school. Someone had made a call. And word had traveled the way it always traveled. Fast, quiet, and without question. When one of their own had a child in danger, they showed up. No invitation needed. No explanation required. Rico, a broad-shouldered man with a gray beard and kind eyes, stepped forward. He didn't say anything dramatic. He didn't ask what happened. He just looked at Daniel, then at Emily, and said, "You good?" Daniel nodded. "We're good. You need anything?" "Not right now." Rico nodded once and stepped back. That was it. No speeches, no posturing, just presence. Just the unspoken message that this family was not alone, had never been alone, and would not be alone tonight or any night that followed. Emily looked at the row of bikes as they walked to the car. She recognized some of the men from barbecues and birthday parties and Sunday dinners at her grandmother's house. They weren't strangers. They were her father's brothers. The ones who showed up at Thanksgiving. The ones who brought her birthday presents wrapped in newspaper because none of them could find wrapping paper. The ones who called her Little Boss and let her sit on their bikes in the driveway while her mother pretended not to watch. She rolled down her window as Rebecca pulled the car toward the exit. The men were still standing by their bikes. Emily raised her hand and waved. Every single one of them nodded back. She rolled the window up and leaned her head against the glass and closed her eyes. The adrenaline was gone now, drained out of her like water from a cracked glass. And what was left behind was the heaviest exhaustion she'd ever felt. Her body was limp. Her mind was quiet. The fear that had lived in her stomach for 3 days had finally, mercifully, released its grip. She was asleep before they reached the highway. In the front seat, Rebecca drove with both hands gripping the wheel. Her eyes were on the road, but her mind was somewhere else. Somewhere dark and terrible, running through every version of what could have happened. What if Emily hadn't noticed? What if she'd been too scared to call? What if Daniel hadn't answered? What if the man had gotten out of the car just once? "Stop," Daniel said quietly. She looked at him. "I can hear you thinking. Stop. She's safe. He's in custody. It's over." "It's not over, Daniel. You know that." He did know that. He knew the investigation would continue. He knew there would be interviews and statements and possibly a trial. He knew the next few months would be a careful, painful process of protecting Emily from the full weight of what she'd stumbled into, while also making sure justice did its work. But right now, in this car, with his daughter asleep in the back seat and his wife's hand trembling on the steering wheel, he chose to hold on to the only thing that mattered. She called. She trusted herself, and she was safe. Everything else, the investigation, the charges, the headlines that were coming, all of that could wait. Tonight, he was going to sit on the edge of his daughter's bed and watch her sleep. He was going to listen to her breathe. He was going to be grateful for every single breath. And tomorrow, he was going to start making sure that what Emily did, that act of courage, that simple, terrifying decision to pick up a phone and say something, wasn't just a story his family told at dinner. He was going to make it a lesson. For every child who ever felt that knot in their stomach and didn't know if it was real. For every kid who noticed something wrong and wasn't sure if they should speak. For every parent who thought preparation was paranoia, and every teacher who assumed someone else was watching. Emily had carried this weight for 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of doubt. 3 days of watching and wondering and being afraid. No child should carry that alone. And Daniel Parker was going to make sure that the next one didn't have to. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the chair beside Emily's bed until midnight, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, counting each one like a man counting things he almost lost. When Rebecca came to the doorway and whispered his name, he held up one finger. 1 more minute. He'd been saying that for 3 hours. At 12:47 a.m., his phone vibrated. A text from Rico. "Brother just drove past the school. 4 units still on scene. Crime tape still up. They're taking this serious." Daniel typed back. "Good." Then another text, this one from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Parker, this is Detective Ruiz. I apologize for the late hour. Can you talk?" Daniel looked at Emily. Still sleeping. Still safe. He eased himself out of the chair, stepped into the hallway, and called back. Ruiz answered on the first ring. "I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important." "I figured. We executed a search warrant on the suspect's vehicle 2 hours ago. I can't go into full detail, but I need to inform you of something that directly concerns your daughter." Daniel's hand tightened around the phone. His back found the wall, and he pressed against it, bracing himself the way you brace for impact when you see it coming but can't move out of the way. "Tell me." "We recovered photographic equipment from the vehicle. A camera with a telephoto lens. And a laptop." Daniel closed his eyes. The laptop contained image folders organized by location, dates, times, school names, categorized and labeled. Was Canyon Ridge in there? The silence on the other end lasted 2 seconds. It felt like 2 years. Yes, 3 folders. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Time-stamped photographs of children on the playground,
during afternoon recess. Daniel's knees almost gave out. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the hallway floor, phone pressed to his ear, the other hand gripping a fistful of his own hair.
Is my daughter in those photographs? We're still analyzing the contents. I'll know more by morning. But I wanted you to hear this from me, not from a news report. How many photos total? Across all locations, we're looking at several hundred, possibly more. The forensic team is working through the laptop now. Daniel couldn't speak. His jaw was locked. His vision was pulsing. Several hundred photographs of children, taken through tinted windows, cataloged like inventory. Mr. Parker? I'm here. I know this is difficult to hear, but I want to be straight with you. This discovery elevates the case significantly. We're no longer looking at suspicious behavior. We're looking at a documented pattern that federal prosecutors can build a case around. And your daughter's observations are the thread that ties it all together. What do you need from us? For now, nothing. Let Emily rest. Let her go to school if she wants to, or keep her home if she needs it. We'll be in touch about a formal statement within the next week, but there's no rush. The evidence is strong. Detective. Yes? If my daughter is in those photographs, I need to know. The second you know, I need to know. You have my word. Daniel hung up. He sat on that hallway floor for a long time. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. He pressed his phone against his forehead and tried to think clearly, but clarity was gone. In its place was something he hadn't felt since his first combat deployment, that sickening cocktail of helplessness and rage that comes when the threat is real, but there's nothing left to fight. The man was in custody. The evidence was being processed. The system was doing its work. And Daniel Parker, a man who had spent his entire life solving problems with his own two hands, could do nothing but sit on the floor and wait. Rebecca found him there 20 minutes later. She didn't ask what happened. She sat down beside him, shoulder to shoulder, and waited for him to talk. They found a camera in his car, Daniel said. And the laptop. Photos of kids, organized by school. Rebecca's body went rigid. Every muscle, every tendon pulled tight like a wire about to snap. Emily? She asked. One word, the only word that mattered. They don't know yet. They're going through everything. Rebecca pressed her hand over her mouth. Her eyes filled and spilled over. Silent tears that ran down her fingers and dropped onto her lap. She didn't make a sound. She had spent her entire adult life being strong. Strong for Emily. Strong for Daniel. Strong for everyone who needed her to hold it together. But right now, in this hallway, at 1 a.m, with her daughter sleeping 10 feet away, she let it go. Daniel put his arm around her and pulled her close. We got him, Beck. He's done. But what if we hadn't? What if she didn't have that phone? What if she didn't call? What if you didn't pick up? Daniel, what if... Stop. We can't live there. She did call. I did pick up. He's in a cell right now because our daughter paid attention. That's the only version of this story that exists. She's 9. I know. She shouldn't know about this. She shouldn't know people like that exist. No, she shouldn't. But she does. And she handled it better than most adults would. Rebecca pulled back and looked at him. Her face was wrecked. Mascara smeared, eyes swollen, lips trembling. I want to kill him, Daniel. I know I shouldn't say that. I know that's not how I'm supposed to feel. But if I could walk into that cell right now... I know. Believe me, I know.
They sat together until the anger cooled into something duller and more manageable. And then they stood and checked on Emily one more time. And then they went to bed without sleeping, lying side by side in the dark, staring at the ceiling, their hands intertwined like an anchor line between two ships in rough water. Morning came too fast and not fast enough. Emily walked into the kitchen at 7:15 and found both her parents already sitting at the table. That was unusual. Her dad was usually in the garage by now. Her mom was usually rushing to get ready for work. But today they were both just sitting there with coffee, watching her walk in like she was the most important thing in the world. "Am I going to school?" Emily asked. Daniel looked at Rebecca. Rebecca looked at Daniel. "Do you want to go to school?" Rebecca asked carefully. Emily thought about it. She opened the refrigerator, pulled out the orange juice, poured herself a glass, and took a long drink. Then she said, "Yeah, I want to go." "You're sure?" "If I don't go, everyone's going to think I'm scared. And I was scared. But I don't want to be scared anymore. I want to go to school and play Foursquare and not think about that stupid car." Daniel almost smiled. Almost. There she was, his daughter. Stubborn, brave, already processing this thing with more clarity than he had at 1 a.m. on the hallway floor. "Okay," he said, "but I'm driving you." "Can I ride on the bike?" "Not today, Em. Today we're taking the truck." He drove her to school. He walked her to the front door. He watched her walk inside without looking back, her ponytail swinging, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, looking exactly like every other kid walking into Canyon Ridge Elementary on a Thursday morning. Except she wasn't every other kid. He was about to leave when his phone rang. Ruiz. "Mr. Parker, I said I'd call when I knew. I know now." Daniel stopped walking. He stood in the middle of the parking lot with his keys in his hand and his heart in his throat. "She's in the photographs. 3 images from Wednesday, all taken during afternoon recess. One is a wide shot of the playground. 2 are closer. She's identifiable in all 3. The keys slipped from Daniel's hand and hit the asphalt. He didn't pick them up. "Mr. Parker?" "How close?" The 2 closer images were taken with a 200mm telephoto lens. She's the primary subject in both. Daniel's vision went white. Not dark. White. Like a flashbulb going off inside his skull. He heard sounds. Cars, birds, a bell ringing somewhere inside the school. But they were distant, muffled, like hearing the world from underwater. His daughter was the primary subject. She wasn't just in the background. She wasn't just caught in a wide shot. Someone had pointed a long-range lens at her, zoomed in, and pressed the shutter. Someone had looked at her through a viewfinder and chosen her. "Mr. Parker, I need you to hear me. The images are being treated as evidence and will be handled with the highest level of confidentiality. They will not be released publicly. Your daughter's identity will be protected throughout this process." "What about the other schools? Were there other kids targeted like this?" "We've identified focused images of children at multiple locations. Your daughter is not alone in this. But I can tell you that her case, the 3-day documentation, the timestamps, the consistency, makes her the strongest evidentiary thread in the entire investigation." Daniel picked up his keys. His hand was steady. His mind was not. "I'm coming to the station." "Mr. Parker, I understand you're—" "I'm not coming to do anything stupid, Detective. I'm coming because my daughter is a primary subject in a predator's photo collection, and I need to understand every single thing your department is doing about it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. He got in his truck. He gripped the steering wheel with both hands and stared at the school building for a full minute. She was in there, right now, playing Foursquare, trying to be normal, trying not to be scared. And somewhere, in an evidence locker, there were photographs of her taken by a man who had watched her through a telephoto lens, a man who had cataloged her, a man who had come back 3 days in a row because of something he saw on that playground that made him aim his camera in her direction. Daniel turned the ignition. He pulled out of the parking lot slowly, carefully, obeying every traffic law, signaling every turn, stopping at every yellow light. Because the war inside him was enormous, and the only way to keep it contained was to move slowly, breathe deliberately, and focus on the next right thing. The next right thing was the station. He arrived at Phoenix PD headquarters at 9:40 a.m. and asked for Detective Ruiz at the front desk. He was escorted to the Special Victims Unit on the 3rd floor. Ruiz met him in a small interview room and closed the door. "Before we start," Ruiz said, "I want you to know that I advocated for full transparency with your family. Not every detective would make that call. But I believe parents have a right to know what was found, especially when a child is directly implicated. I appreciate that. I also need to prepare you. The investigation is expanding faster than we initially projected. As of this morning, the FBI has officially taken lead on the multi-county aspects of the case. Phoenix PD retains jurisdiction over the Canyon Ridge incidents, but the broader investigation, the other 10 sites, is now federal." "What does that mean for Emily?" "It means that any formal statement she gives will likely be used in federal proceedings. It means there will be victim advocates assigned to your family. It means this process could take months, possibly longer." "Will she have to testify?" Ruiz paused. "It's possible, but given her age, there are protections in place. Closed circuit testimony, pre-recorded depositions, no direct cross-examination by defense counsel. We would do everything in our power to shield her from the courtroom itself." Daniel leaned forward. "Let me ask you something, Detective, man to man, not cop to father. How bad is this?" Ruiz held his gaze. "This is one of the most significant child safety cases this department has handled in a decade. The suspect's level of organization, the geographic spread, the duration of the surveillance. This isn't opportunistic behavior. This is systematic, planned, and your daughter's 3 days of observation cracked it open." "You keep saying that. My daughter cracked it open. My daughter gave you what you needed. But my daughter is 9 years old, and she's sitting in a classroom right now with photographs of herself in an evidence locker." "So when you tell me how important she is to this case, what I hear is that the system needed a child to do what it couldn't." Ruiz didn't flinch. He didn't deflect. He sat with that statement the way a man sits with the truth when it's ugly and accurate. "You're right," he said. "We had been tracking this individual for 14 months. We had resources, manpower, surveillance capabilities, and a 9-year-old girl with a prepaid phone beat all of it. How? Because she was there, every day, at the same time, and she paid attention. That's something no amount of technology can replicate. A human being in the right place, watching, and refusing to look away." Daniel pressed his palms flat on the table. "I need to tell Rebecca about the photographs before she hears it from anyone else." "Understood. I'd recommend having that conversation today. And I'd also recommend, gently, that you don't share this specific information with Emily. Not yet. She knows she did something important. She doesn't need to know the full extent of what was found. Not at Nime." "Agreed. One more thing, Mr. Parker." "Yeah?" "The FBI team lead on this case, Special Agent Torres. She's going to want to meet with you and your wife. She's thorough, she's aggressive, and she doesn't lose cases. If there's anyone you want on the other side of this, it's her. Daniel stood. He shook Ruiz's hand. He held the grip a beat longer than necessary. Thank you for calling me at midnight. Thank you for not waiting until morning. Your daughter didn't wait. I figured her father deserved the same respect. Daniel walked out of the station and sat in his truck for 15 minutes before starting the engine. He called Rebecca. I need you to come home early today. Why? What happened? Is Emily? Emily's fine. She's at school. But I just came from the police station, and there are things I need to tell you in person. Daniel, you're scaring me.
I know. Come home. I'll be there. He drove home. He sat at the kitchen table. He waited. And when Rebecca walked through the door 40 minutes later with fear written across every line of her face, he told her everything. The camera, the laptop, the folders organized by school, the telephoto lens, the 3 photographs of their daughter taken on Wednesday. Rebecca didn't cry this time. She went somewhere past crying, somewhere quiet and cold and absolutely still. She sat across from him with her hands flat on the table and her eyes focused on a point somewhere behind his head, and she didn't move for a very long time. Then she said, "What are we going to do?" "We're going to let the FBI do their job. We're going to cooperate fully. We're going to protect Emily from the details she doesn't need to know, and we're going to hold this family together. And if she has to testify, then we'll prepare her, the same way I prepared her to make that call, one step at a time, with honesty and without fear." She's going to have nightmares, Daniel. Maybe, and if she does, we'll be there when she wakes up. Rebecca finally looked at him, directly at him, through him. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't go after him. Promise me you won't ask Rico or anyone else to do something that lands you in a cell while your daughter needs you free. Promise me, Daniel. He wanted to lie. God, he wanted to lie, because every cell in his body was burning with the need to walk into that jail and make that man feel a fraction of the terror he had inflicted on children across 4 counties. But Rebecca was right. Emily needed her father present, not in a courtroom, not in a cell. Present. I promise, he said. And he meant it. Because the hardest battle Daniel Parker had ever fought wasn't overseas, and it wasn't on the road with his brothers. It was right here, right now, sitting at his kitchen table, choosing restraint over revenge, choosing his daughter's future over his own fury. That afternoon, he picked Emily up from school. She came out the front doors with Chloe, both of them laughing about something. And for one perfect, merciful moment, she looked like any other 4th grader. Carefree, silly, whole. She climbed into the truck and buckled her seatbelt. Can we get ice cream? Yeah, Em. We can get ice cream. Can Chloe come? He looked at Chloe, standing on the sidewalk with her backpack hanging off one shoulder, grinning at him with a gap-toothed smile. Sure. Hop in, Chloe. Both girls piled into the back seat and immediately launched into a debate about whether chocolate chip cookie dough was better than mint chip, a debate so fierce and so important that it drowned out everything else: the evidence locker, the telephoto lens, the FBI, the 14 months, the 11 schools. Daniel drove to the ice cream shop and listened to his daughter argue passionately for cookie dough. And for 10 minutes, the world was exactly what it was supposed to be. Small, simple, safe. He held on to those 10 minutes the way a drowning man holds onto a rope. Because he knew what was coming. He knew the investigation would deepen. He knew the headlines would break. He knew that the name and face of the man in that SUV would be everywhere, and that the story of a 9-year-old girl who cracked the case would follow right behind it. The storm was coming,
But right now, there was ice cream. And that was enough. The ice cream lasted 10 minutes. The peace lasted less. Daniel's phone rang while he was still sitting in the parking lot of the shop, watching Emily and Chloe through the window, both of them laughing with chocolate smeared on their chins, like the world hadn't cracked open 48 hours ago. The caller ID said, unknown, but Daniel had been around long enough to know that unknown numbers after a federal case meant one thing. He answered. Mr. Parker, this is Special Agent Maria Torres with the FBI Phoenix Field Office. Detective Ruiz gave me your number. I'd like to meet with you and your wife as soon as possible. Her voice was sharp, clipped, the kind of voice that didn't waste syllables because every second mattered. Daniel had known officers like her in the Army, the ones who walked into a room and made everyone else feel like they'd been moving too slow their entire lives. When? Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I can come to your home if that's easier. Our home is fine. I should tell you up front, Mr. Parker, this meeting isn't a courtesy call. The scope of what we're dealing with has expanded significantly in the last 12 hours. There are things you and your wife need to understand before the media cycle catches up. What do you mean, before the media catches up? I mean, someone in the county prosecutor's office has a loose mouth, and a reporter from Channel 5 has already filed a FOIA request on the Canyon Ridge incident. We have maybe 72 hours before this story goes public. I need your family prepared. Daniel looked through the window at Emily. She was arm-wrestling Chloe across the table, tongue sticking out, completely absorbed in the fierce competition of being 9 years old. We'll be ready, he said. Good. 9 o'clock. She hung up. No goodbye, no pleasantries. Daniel stared at the phone and understood immediately. Torres wasn't the kind of agent who held your hand. She was the kind who told you the truth, fast enough to hurt, and then helped you figure out what to do with it. He respected that. He dreaded it. That night, after Emily was asleep and the house was quiet, Daniel told Rebecca about the call. She listened without interrupting. She'd gotten better at that over the past 2 days. The listening, the holding still, the absorbing things that would have leveled her before October, and processing them with a steadiness that surprised even her. The media, she said. They're going to want the story. They're going to want Emily's story. Over my dead body. That's exactly what Torres is coming to talk about. How to protect her. How to control what gets out. Can we control it? I don't know, but we're going to try. Rebecca was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that Daniel hadn't expected. I want to be in the room when Torres talks. Not behind you, not beside you. In it. I need to hear everything directly. No filter. No waiting for you to come home and translate. Beck, I would never. I know you wouldn't. But I'm her mother, Daniel. And I've spent the last 2 days hearing things secondhand. From you, from Ruiz, from the school counselor. I need to be in that room. I need to ask my own questions. I need to look this woman in the eye and know she's going to protect my daughter. Daniel nodded. You'll be there, right next to me. Not next to you, across from her. I want her to see my face when she talks about my child. He almost smiled. Almost. Rebecca Parker was 5'4", 120 pounds, and she had just declared war with the quiet certainty of a woman who would walk through concrete to reach her kid. Torres had no idea what was coming. Special Agent Maria Torres arrived at 9:01 a.m. She drove an unmarked black sedan, wore a navy blazer over a white shirt, and carried a leather portfolio that looked like it had been through more cases than most lawyers see in a career. Her handshake was firm. Her eye contact was direct. She didn't comment on the house, didn't make small talk, didn't accept the coffee Rebecca offered. She sat down at the kitchen table, opened her portfolio,
and said, "Let me tell you where we are."
"Please," Rebecca said. She was sitting directly across from Torres, hands folded, back straight, eyes locked. Torres didn't blink. If anything, she seemed to appreciate it. The suspect's name is Gerald Whitmore, 53 years old, no prior convictions, clean record, employed as an IT consultant, which gave him flexible hours and a reason to be in different locations on different days. He's been under investigation by my office for 14 months. In that time, he rotated between 11 school sites across 4 counties. He used rental vehicles, changed plates regularly, and never stayed at any single location long enough for our surveillance teams to establish a documented pattern. She paused. Until your daughter. Rebecca's jaw tightened. Daniel saw her fingers press harder against the table. Emily's 3 consecutive days of observation at Canyon Ridge, combined with her detailed recall, time of day, vehicle description, behavioral patterns, the fact that the driver never exited, gave us the first verifiable, time-stamped, witness-corroborated placement we've had in this entire investigation. When Mr. Parker called 911 and then physically prevented the suspect from leaving the scene, that created a documented law enforcement encounter that locked Whitmore to a specific location on a specific date. "You're saying the whole case hinges on a 9-year-old?" Rebecca said. It wasn't a question. "I'm saying your daughter provided the evidentiary foundation that allows us to build a prosecutable case. Without her, we had a pattern. With her, we have proof." "What exactly did you find on that laptop?" Rebecca asked. Torres looked at Daniel. Daniel nodded. They'd already discussed this. No more filters. Torres turned back to Rebecca. 743 photographs, taken over a span of 11 months across all 11 sites. Children at play, organized into folders by location and date. The images were not distributed. We have no evidence of sharing or uploading. But the volume, the organization, and the targeting pattern meet every threshold for federal charges under child exploitation statutes. "Targeting pattern," Rebecca repeated. "What does that mean?" "It means that within the broader collection, there are clusters of images focused on individual children. Not random shots of playgrounds. Specific children, photographed repeatedly across multiple days." Rebecca's face didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. A door closing, a wall going up. A mother's mind sealing itself off from the full horror of what she was hearing so she could keep functioning. "How many children were targeted specifically?" "We've identified 23 children across the 11 sites who appear in focused, repeated images." "And Emily is one of the 23. "Yes." The kitchen was silent. The refrigerator hummed. A clock ticked somewhere in the living room. Daniel watched Rebecca process this number, 23, and he watched her decide in real time what to do with it. She chose fury. 23 children, Rebecca said, her voice low and controlled and absolutely lethal. 23 families who are about to find out what we just found out. 23 parents who are going to sit at their kitchen tables and hear what I'm hearing right now. And you're telling me that for 14 months, with the resources of the FBI, you couldn't stop this man before he built a collection of 743 photographs of other people's kids? Torres held her gaze. She didn't defend. She didn't deflect. She sat with it. "You're right to be angry, Mrs. Parker." "I'm not angry. Angry is what I was 2 days ago. Right now I'm something else entirely, and I don't have a word for it yet. What I need to know is what happens next. Not with the case, with my daughter, with my family, with the 22 other families who are about to go through what we're going through." Torres nodded. "That's exactly what I'm here to discuss. Starting today, your family will be assigned a federal victim advocate.
Their job is to guide you through every stage of the legal process, from depositions to trial preparation. They'll also connect you with specialized counseling services, if Emily needs support. "She's seeing someone already," Daniel said. "We started Monday." "Good. Keep that going. The advocate will coordinate with her therapist to make sure nothing in the legal process undermines her treatment." "What about the media?" Rebecca asked. "That's where it gets complicated.
We can protect Emily's identity in court documents and official proceedings. Her name will be sealed. But the story itself, a 9-year-old's phone call leading to a federal case, is going to attract attention. Reporters are already circling. I can't stop them from reporting the story. What I can do is ensure that no official source releases identifying information. And unofficial sources? That's harder to control. School staff, other parents, community members, anyone who knows it was Emily could talk. I'd recommend having a conversation with the school principal about confidentiality. And I'd recommend being very careful about what Emily says to her friends." Daniel leaned forward. "She's 9. Her best friend already knows she made the call. Kids talk." "Then you need to prepare for the possibility that Emily's identity becomes known locally, even if it's protected nationally. And you need to prepare Emily for that." "How do you prepare a 9-year-old for being the face of a federal child exploitation case?" Rebecca asked. Torres closed her portfolio. She looked at Rebecca for a long time, and for the first time, something in her expression softened. Not much. Just enough to reveal that underneath the blazer and the badge and the 14 months of hunting a predator, there was a human being who understood exactly how impossible this question was. "You don't make her the face of anything," Torres said. "You let her be a kid. You answer her questions honestly when she asks them. You don't volunteer information she hasn't asked for. And you remind her, every single day, that what she did was right. Because the next few months are going to test that. She's going to hear things at school. She's going to see things on the news. She's going to wonder if she caused all of this, and she needs to know, deeply, unshakably, that she didn't cause it. She ended it." Rebecca's composure cracked, just a fraction. Just enough for one tear to escape before she pressed her fingers against her eyes and pushed it back. "Thank you," Rebecca said, "for being straight with us. It's the only way I know how to work. And Mrs. Parker?" "Yes?" "Your daughter is the bravest witness I've ever had on a case. And I've been doing this for 16 years. Torres left at 10:45. Daniel and Rebecca sat at the kitchen table for a long time after the door closed, not speaking, just breathing, letting the weight of everything settle into place. The first news report aired 3 days later. Channel 5, as Torres predicted. The anchor called it a chilling case of predatory surveillance and described the arrest in broad terms. No names, no school identified, just an elementary school in the greater Phoenix area, and a young student whose observations led to the suspect's apprehension. Daniel watched the report with his jaw clenched. Rebecca watched it with her arms crossed. Emily was at Chloe's house for a playdate, mercifully unaware. By the next morning, 4 more stations had picked it up. By the end of the week, it was national. CNN ran a segment. The AP wire carried a version. A producer from a daytime talk show called the school district asking for the family. The school district called Daniel. "Mr. Parker, we've received 17 media inquiries in the last 48 hours. We've declined all of them per FBI guidance. But I want you to know that someone in the parent community has been talking. 2 reporters now have the name of the school." Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. "Has anyone named Emily?" "Not publicly, not yet. But it's only a matter of time before—" "It's not going to happen. I don't care what it takes. My daughter's name does not appear in any report, any broadcast, any article.
She's 9 years old. She's a victim.
And if any reporter puts her name out there, they're going to hear from the FBI, from our attorney, and from me, in that order. The principal hesitated. Understood, Mr. Parker. Daniel called Torres immediately. The wall is cracking. Reporters have the school name. It's only a matter of time before they connect the dots. I'll handle it. I'm issuing a federal request to all media outlets involved, reminding them that identifying a minor victim in a federal exploitation case carries legal consequences. That usually shuts it down. Usually? In 16 years, I've never had a reporter cross that line after receiving our notice. They know the stakes. And if someone does, then they'll wish they hadn't. Daniel believed her. The media storm intensified for 2 weeks, then gradually shifted to the next headline, the way storms always do. The story remained. It was too significant to disappear entirely. But it settled into background noise, referenced in legal analyses and child safety articles, rather than splashed across evening news broadcasts. Emily noticed. She couldn't not notice. Other kids at school whispered. A boy in her class told her he saw her school on TV. A girl in the cafeteria asked if she was the one who caught the bad guy. Emily came home that day and sat at the kitchen table with the expression of someone carrying something too heavy for the vessel it was in. "People know," she said. Daniel sat across from her. "What do they know?" "They know it was me. Not from the news, from talking. Chloe told Mia, and Mia told everyone." "How do you feel about that?" Emily looked at her hands. "I don't know. Some kids think it's cool, like I'm some kind of hero. But I don't feel like a hero. I just feel weird. Like everyone's looking at me different." "Different how?" "Like I'm not just Emily anymore. Like I'm the girl who did the thing. And I don't want to be the girl who did the thing. I just want to be Emily." Daniel reached across the table and took her hands. "Then be Emily. You don't owe anyone your story. You don't have to explain what happened. You don't have to answer questions you don't want to answer. If someone asks, you can say, 'I don't want to talk about it.' And that's enough. It's always enough. But what if they keep asking? Then you tell a teacher, or you tell me, or you tell Mom, and we'll handle it." "Daddy, Chloe feels really bad. She's been crying all day because she told Mia, and now everyone knows. She thinks I'm mad at her." Daniel's heart twisted. Chloe. Sweet, gap-toothed Chloe, who had been Emily's best friend since first grade, who had sat beside her during the lockdown, who had shared ice cream with her the day after. Chloe wasn't malicious. Chloe was 10. 10-year-olds talk. That's what they do. "Are you mad at her?" Daniel asked. Emily thought about it. Really thought, the way she did. Carefully, seriously, with the full weight of her 9-year-old conscience. "No," she said. "She didn't mean to. She was just excited because her best friend did something brave. She wasn't trying to hurt me." Daniel looked at his daughter and felt something he couldn't articulate. This child, this 9-year-old who had been photographed by a predator, who had triggered a federal investigation, who is navigating the aftermath of something most adults would crumble under, was sitting at the kitchen table extending grace to her best friend, forgiving easily, seeing clearly, being better than the situation demanded. "You want to call her?" Daniel asked. "Can she come over?" "Yeah, she can come over." Emily called Chloe. The conversation lasted 11 seconds. "Hey, it's me. Stop crying. I'm not mad. Come over." Chloe was there in 15 minutes. The two girls disappeared into Emily's room, and within half an hour, Daniel heard laughter through the door. Real laughter. The kind that has no weight behind it, no agenda, no shadow. Just two kids being kids. Rebecca came home from work to the sound of it and stopped in the hallway. She looked at Daniel. He looked at her. "Chloe's here," he said. "I can hear." She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. "That's the best sound I've heard in 2 weeks." The deposition was scheduled for the following month. Torres handled the preparation personally. She met with Emily 3 times beforehand, not to coach her, but to familiarize her with the process. What the room would look like, who would be present, what kinds of questions she'd be asked, how long it would take. Emily handled it the way she handled everything, with steady eyes and trembling hands. The day of the deposition, Daniel drove her to the federal building. Rebecca sat in the back seat beside her, holding her hand. Nobody spoke for the first 10 minutes. Then Emily said, "I wish I could just write it down instead of saying it." "Why?" Rebecca asked. "Because when I write things, my voice doesn't shake." Daniel caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Em, your voice can shake. It's allowed to shake. The people in that room aren't judging how you sound. They're listening to what you saw. What if I forget something? Then you say, 'I don't remember.' That's a perfectly good answer. What if I cry? Then you cry, and we'll be right outside the door." Emily nodded. She squeezed Rebecca's hand tighter. The deposition lasted 2 hours and 14 minutes. Daniel and Rebecca sat in the hallway the entire time. They didn't speak. They didn't check their phones. They sat shoulder to shoulder with their backs against the wall and their eyes on that closed door. And they waited. When the door opened, Torres came out first. She looked at Daniel and Rebecca and said, "She did beautifully. Clear, consistent, detailed. The prosecutors are extremely satisfied." Then Emily came out. Her eyes were red. Her ponytail was loose. She looked exhausted in a way that no child should ever look exhausted. The weariness of having relived the worst week of her life in a room full of strangers with recording equipment. She walked straight to her parents without a word. Rebecca knelt down and pulled her close. Daniel put his hand on the back of her head. "I'm done," Emily said into her mother's shoulder. "I did it. I said everything." "You're done," Rebecca whispered. "You never have to do that again." "Promise?" "Promise." They walked out of the federal building together, the 3 of them, the way they'd walked out of Canyon Ridge Elementary that first day. Daniel's arm around Rebecca, Rebecca's arm around Emily, Emily in the middle, where she belonged, where nothing could reach her. In the car, Emily buckled herself in and leaned her head against the window. She was quiet for 3 blocks. Then she said, "Can we get ice cream?" Daniel laughed. For the first time in weeks, he actually laughed. Not a big laugh, not a long one, just a short, sharp release of something that had been coiled too tight for too long. "Yeah, I am. We can get ice cream." "Cookie dough?" "Whatever you want." She closed her eyes and pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I think I'm going to be okay." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His eyes burned, his throat locked. But he kept driving, steady and straight, the way he'd done everything since the day his daughter called him from a bathroom stall and trusted him with the most important phone call of her life. "I know you are, Em. I've known that since the day you were born." She was asleep before they reached the ice cream shop. Rebecca looked back at her, then at Daniel. "She's stronger than both of us," Rebecca said. Daniel nodded. He didn't trust his voice, because she was. She always had been. And the world was about to find out just how much one child's strength could change. The federal indictment came down on a Tuesday, 4 months and 11 days after Emily Parker made that phone call from a bathroom stall. Special Agent Torres called Daniel at 6:42 a.m., before Emily was even awake, and said the words he'd been waiting to hear since October. "It's done." Grand jury returned a 37-count indictment.
Federal charges across 4 counties. Child exploitation material, surveillance with intent, criminal stalking of minors, and 14 counts of unlawful photography of children in protected zones. He's not getting out, Mr. Parker. Not for a very long time. Daniel was standing in his garage. He had a wrench in one hand and his phone in the other.
He set the wrench down carefully on the workbench, pressed the phone harder against his ear, and said, 37 counts. 37. And Emily's observations at Canyon Ridge form the backbone of the prosecution's timeline. Her 3-day documentation is cited in the indictment as the critical evidentiary link between the suspect's pattern of behavior and a specific, verifiable location. The prosecutors told me directly, without her, this case would still be open. Daniel sat down on the garage floor. Not because his legs gave out, because something inside him, something that had been clenched tight for 4 months, wound like a spring, holding him upright through the interviews and the sleepless nights and the meetings with FBI victim advocates and the careful, exhausting work of keeping Emily whole, finally let go. He pressed his forehead against his knees and breathed. Mr. Parker, you there? Yeah, I'm here. There's something else. The lead prosecutor wants you to know that, based on the strength of the evidence, they're not offering a plea deal. They're taking this to trial. Full prosecution. Maximum sentencing recommendation. Good. Emily will not need to testify in person. Her recorded deposition, combined with your 911 call transcript and the photographic evidence, gives the prosecution everything they need. She won't have to set foot in a courtroom. Daniel's eyes burned. He pressed the heels of his hands against them and held them there. She wouldn't have to testify. She wouldn't have to sit in a witness box and face the man who photographed her through a chain-link fence. She wouldn't have to relive it. Thank you, he said, and he meant it for everything. For the midnight phone call, for the transparency, for Torres and her team, for the system that, despite all its slowness and all its failures, had finally done what it was built to do. He hung up and sat in the garage for another 10 minutes. Then he walked inside, poured 2 cups of coffee, and waited for Rebecca. She came downstairs at 7:15, still tying her hair back, and saw the 2 cups on the table. She stopped. She looked at his face, and she knew. It's over? 37 counts, federal indictment, no plea deal, full trial. Rebecca sat down slowly. She picked up the coffee cup with both hands and held it without drinking. Her eyes closed. Her lips moved slightly, and Daniel realized she was counting. Counting breaths. Counting the months. Counting all the nights she'd lain awake, imagining the worst. She doesn't have to testify? No, the deposition was enough. Rebecca set the cup down and pressed her hands flat on the table, the way she always did when she was trying to hold herself steady. Then her shoulders dropped, not in defeat, but in release. 4 months of tension leaving her body all at once, like a held breath finally exhaled. I want to tell her, Rebecca said. Together. Before school. Okay. They called Emily down at 7:30. She came into the kitchen with her backpack already on, ponytail tight, ready to go. She looked at both of them sitting at the table and frowned. Am I in trouble? No, baby. Sit down for a second. Emily sat. She looked back and forth between them with those sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. The same eyes that had spotted a dark gray SUV from across a playground. The same eyes that had watched it come back 3 days in a row. The same eyes that had refused to look away when every instinct told her to pretend she hadn't seen it. Daniel leaned forward. Em, you remember how we told you the police were working on the case? The man from the car? Yeah? They finished. He's been charged. A lot of charges. He's going to go to trial. and the prosecutors believe he's going to go to prison for a very long time." Emily was quiet. She looked down at her hands on the table. She spread her fingers wide, then curled them into fists, then spread them again. A 9-year-old processing something no 9-year-old should have to process. "Because of what I saw?" "Because of what you saw. Because of what you reported. Because of the details you remembered. The police told us this morning that your observations were the most important part of the entire case." Emily looked up. "Across all the schools?" Daniel and Rebecca exchanged a glance. They had never told Emily about the other schools. They had shielded her from the scope, from the 11 sites, from the hundreds of photographs. But Emily was Emily. She listened. She watched. She put things together. "You know about the other schools?" Rebecca asked carefully. "I heard you and Daddy talking one night, through the wall. I know he was at other places too. I know it wasn't just Canyon Ridge." Rebecca reached across the table and took Emily's hand. "We didn't tell you because we didn't want to scare you." "I know, Mom, but I'm not scared anymore. I was scared when I didn't know what was happening. Now I know, and knowing is better." Daniel felt that hit him square in the chest. Knowing is better. His daughter, at 9, had just articulated the exact philosophy he'd built his entire approach to parenting around. Preparation over ignorance. Truth over comfort. Knowledge over fear. She was already who he'd hoped she'd become. She just got there faster than he expected. "So what happens now?" Emily asked. "Now," Daniel said, "we let the lawyers do their job, and we go back to normal." "Can normal include ice cream after school?" "Normal can absolutely include ice cream after school." She grinned, the first real, unguarded grin he'd seen from her since October. Not brave, not forced, just a kid who wanted ice cream. Just a kid being a kid. She grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. Then she stopped, turned around, and looked at her father with an expression that was older than her years and younger than her courage. "Daddy?" "Yeah, Em." "Thank you for picking up the phone." She walked out the door. Daniel sat at the table with his cold coffee and his wife's hand in his, and something cracking open inside his ribcage that he couldn't name and didn't try to. Rebecca squeezed his hand. "She's going to be okay." She's going to be more than okay. The news broke that afternoon. Every local station in Phoenix led with the story. By evening, it had gone national. The details were staggering. A 14-month surveillance operation, 11 schools, 4 counties, hundreds of photographs, and a 9-year-old girl whose 3 days of careful observation had provided the key evidence federal prosecutors needed to bring the case home. They didn't name Emily. The court protections ensured that. But the story was everywhere. Fourth grader's phone call leads to federal indictment. And everyone who knew the Parkers knew exactly who that fourth grader was. Daniel's phone didn't stop ringing. Fellow club members, army buddies, neighbors, parents from Canyon Ridge. Everyone wanted to say the same thing. "Thank you. Your daughter is a hero. We can't believe a 9-year-old did what the whole system couldn't." He let most of the calls go to voicemail. He wasn't interested in praise. He was interested in what came next. Because the story wasn't just about catching one man. It was about the 3 days before the call. The 3 days Emily had carried that weight alone. The 3 days she had watched and waited and doubted herself and almost talked herself out of speaking up. That gap between noticing and acting, between instinct and voice, was where children got lost. And Daniel was determined to close it. He called Detective Ruiz the following week. "I want to do something," Daniel said. "Not a media tour, not a foundation, something real, something that reaches kids directly." "What are you thinking?"
A workshop for elementary schools, teaching kids what Emily already knew, that instinct is real, that fear is information, that speaking up isn't overreacting, and teaching parents what I taught her, that preparation isn't paranoia, that a child needs to know they'll be believed. Have you talked to the school district? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first, because you're the one who saw both sides of this. The investigation that stalled for 14 months, and the 9-year-old who broke it open in 3 days. If you stood next to me and told parents and kids what you told me in that hallway, it would mean something. Ruiz was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When do we start?" They called it Make the Call. Daniel partnered with Ruiz, with community liaison officers, with school counselors, and with 2 child psychologists who volunteered their time. The first session was held at the Canyon Ridge Elementary Library on a Saturday morning in March. They expected 30 people. 87 showed up. Daniel stood at the front of the room and looked out at rows of parents and children and teachers, and for a moment, the words wouldn't come. He wasn't a public speaker. He was a mechanic and a veteran and a biker who loved his daughter. But he thought about Emily in that bathroom stall, trembling hands, whispering into a phone, doing the bravest thing he'd ever witnessed, and the words came. My daughter noticed something wrong, and she didn't know if it was real. She spent 3 days carrying that doubt by herself. 3 days wondering if she was overreacting. 3 days trying to talk herself out of what her gut was telling her. And on the 3rd day, she made a call that led to a federal indictment. He paused. "I'm not here to scare your kids. I'm here to tell you that every child in this room already has the most powerful safety tool that exists. It's not an app. It's not a tracking device. It's their instinct. And our job, as parents, as teachers, as the adults in their lives, is to make sure they trust it." Ruiz spoke next. He told the room, without identifying Emily or the suspect, what the investigation had looked like from the inside. How a team of trained professionals with surveillance equipment and interagency coordination had been unable to do what one observant child accomplished with a prepaid phone and the courage to speak. "We train officers to observe, document, and report," Ruiz said. "That's exactly what this child did. She observed a pattern. She documented it in her memory. Times, details, behaviors. And she reported it to someone she trusted. If every child in this room learned those 3 steps, the world would be a safer place." After the presentation, a girl in the 2nd row raised her hand. She was maybe 10, glasses, nervous. "What if you tell someone and they don't believe you?" Daniel looked at her. "Then you tell someone else. And if they don't believe you, you tell someone else. You keep telling people until someone listens. Because you are not the problem. You are never the problem. The problem is the person who makes you feel like you have to stay quiet." The girl nodded slowly, and beside her, her mother reached over and took her hand. Emily was sitting in the back row. She hadn't wanted to be up front. She hadn't wanted to be introduced or recognized or applauded. She just wanted to listen. But when a boy about her age raised his hand and asked, "Were you scared when you made the call?" And when Ruiz turned and looked at her, asking silent permission, she stood up. Every head in the room turned. "Yeah," Emily said. "I was really scared. My hands were shaking so bad I almost couldn't dial. And I kept thinking, maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was being stupid. Maybe everyone would laugh at me." She paused. The room was perfectly still. "But my dad told me something a long time ago. He said, if your stomach tells you something's wrong, you call. You don't wait to be sure. You don't worry about being wrong. You just call." So I did. "And what happened?" the boy asked. "The police came. They caught the bad guy. And my dad told me that being scared and doing it anyway, that's what courage is." She sat back down. Rebecca put her arm around her. Daniel, standing at the front of the room, looked at his daughter and felt something settle inside him. Not pride, though there was plenty of that. Something deeper. The recognition that the cycle was complete. He had given her the tools. She had used them. And now she was passing them on.
The Make the Call program expanded to 14 schools within 6 months, then to other districts, then to community centers and libraries across the state. Daniel and Ruiz ran every session together, an unlikely pair, a Hells Angels member and a police detective, united by a shared understanding that the safety of children was bigger than any badge or patch. The trial concluded 8 months later. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all 37 counts. The judge handed down the maximum sentence. Daniel was in the courtroom for the verdict. Rebecca was beside him. Emily was at home with her grandmother, doing homework, eating popcorn, being 10 years old. Because that's what her parents wanted for her. Not a courtroom, not a verdict. Just a normal Tuesday night. When Daniel got home, Emily was asleep on the couch with her math book open on her lap. He lifted her gently, carried her to her room, and set her down on her bed. He pulled the covers up. He brushed the hair from her forehead, and he stood there for a moment, looking at the face of the girl who had changed everything. Not with a weapon, not with force, not with anything the world would traditionally call power. With a phone call, with 3 days of watching, with the refusal to stay silent when silence was easier. He turned off the light and walked to the doorway. Behind him, Emily stirred. "Daddy?" "Yeah, Em?" "Is it really over?" "It's really over." She was quiet for a moment. Then, in a voice already halfway to sleep, she said, "Good. I don't want to think about it anymore." "Then don't. It's done." "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "I love you." "I love you too, kid. More than you'll ever know." He closed the door. He walked down the hallway. He sat at the kitchen table across from Rebecca, who was waiting with 2 glasses and a bottle she'd been saving for exactly this night. She poured. They raised their glasses. They didn't toast to the verdict. They didn't toast to the sentence. They didn't toast to justice, or the system, or the FBI. They toasted to Emily, to a 9-year-old girl who noticed a car that didn't belong, to 3 days of watching, to hands that shook but dialed anyway, to a voice that trembled but spoke anyway, to the courage of a child who trusted herself when she had every reason to doubt, and to the one truth that Daniel Parker would carry with him for the rest of his life. The truth that every parent, every teacher, every adult who has ever looked at a child and wondered if they were really listening needs to hear. They are listening. They are watching. They see more than we think. They know more than we give them credit for. And when we teach them that their voice matters, when we teach them that fear is not weakness, that instinct is intelligence, that speaking up is never wrong, they will rise. Every single time, they will rise. Emily Parker did not save herself because she was extraordinary. She saved herself because someone taught her that ordinary courage, the kind that shakes and doubts and almost doesn't act, is the most powerful force in the world. She was scared, and she called anyway. And that made all the difference.